What was your "the universe is fucking with me" moment? I have had major food poisoning and had to call out on my first day of work to a spiffy new high-paying job. Twice. The evening of my first day without a cigarette in 15 years, I came across a full pack of smokes lying on a window ledge. Laughter ensued. I never had found even one discarded cigarette before. Nor since. While getting dumped, I was shat on by a pigeon. Right after moving, I was in a car accident on the freeway during rush hour. Back end of my car was crunched while it was sitting in the parking lot of a collision center waiting to be repaired. A semi backed into the front end. The collision center was right next to a trucking company. When my husband called to tell me what had happened, I thought he was joking. August 2019. First weekend in August, I get mugged and punched on a night out. Lose my phone, wallet, keys. The same weekend my dad and second mum split up after 15 years. The weekend after, my mum goes on holiday. The first night she's away and I'm watching the dogs. The eldest passes away in the midnight. Vet as him holding her. About 3 days before she comes home, I get rushed into hospital with supposed sepsis and have surgery. Luckily I was in and out within a week. The last weekend of August, my car breaks down and costs me £300 plus in repairs. And X 200B. August can fuck off. I'm not leaving the house next August. Obligatory, not me, but my mother-in-law. She claims she is cursed and ends up in the hospital every April 1st. Without fail. It started when she was a child. And every year something different gets her: a dog mauling her, a car accident, the balcony security rail giving out and making her fall down 3 stories, numerous wounds from other people's April Fool pranks going wrong, etc. She even has a bunch of scars. And she can tell you which April 1st caused which scar. Complete with a full story. One April 1st, we were staying at her place and she made a pillow bunker in her bedroom and literally waited out the entire day in there. She promised to herself that this would be the first April 1st in decades without a hospital visit. Midnight arrived and she triumphantly left her pillow fort, unharmed and victorious. To celebrate, she decided to cook hamburgers for the whole family. The pan, full of burning hot oil, somehow slipped from her hands in such a way that all the oil spilled on her arm. An ambulance had to be called and she needed skin grafts. My personal theory is that the universe got mad. She tried to fight back and turned the April 1st curse up to 11. Back when I was a kid, I borrowed a CD of my dad's without asking, and it ended up becoming lost. We looked everywhere, but it was never found. It was a very unique CD and couldn't be replaced. Dad scolded me, but worse, as only a dad can do. He would tease me about it. Example, we'd be riding in the car and he'd sarcastically say, "Boy, it'd sure be nice to listen to that CD. I wonder where it could be." Exclamation mark. Close bracket. He never forgot, and he made sure that I never forgot either. Fast forward 10 years, my dad died unexpectedly while at work. It was absolutely devastating. He was everything to me and my family, and we were broken. Thankfully, the universe, or someone/something, made sure to let us know everything was going to be okay. After we arrived home from the funeral, my mom, siblings, and I were sitting around in silent shock. It was Christmas time, so my brother thought he'd try lightening the mood by playing some Christmas music. He went into the CD cabinet, and there, sitting right in front, was the missing CD. We'd gone into the CD cabinet many times a week for years and years. There was no way we could have missed it. That CD had been missing for 10 years. It was like someone placed it there for us to find. We burst into tears and cried until we couldn't. It was beyond belief. You can't save this file because it's currently open. I know it's open. I made a change and I'm trying to save said change. Open bracket. Just yesterday, we had a meeting about restructuring pay, wages and titles. I was the logistics team lead for 6 years before starting up our facilities department 2 years ago. The meeting is going along, then they mentioned moving up in the company, which piqued my interest. I swapped departments because they did not want a logistics manager at this site. They then explain that after 2 years in a position they will be either moving people into manager positions or expert position, so for people who don't have manager skills or are a department of one like mine, those positions will be expected to take on one project a year. I am sitting there dumbfounded. I have been doing multiple projects every year while running the full logistics department. I have completely built our facilities department from the ground up. I have done back-to-back 500k projects this year alone. After the meeting I met with ours and the GM to ask what does this mean for me? How am I going to get bumped up? I was told time doesn't start until this year, so I am 2 years from a manager's position and the 20k that comes with it. I just had my resume professionally done and am sending it out. Fuck this company. The building I work in has 2 one-person bathrooms. In between them, the wall is set back few feet from the rest of the hallway. In that gap is a water fountain. A couple of months ago, I went to the drinking fountain to fill up my water bottle, except there was no water fountain. The wall between the bathroom doors was completely filled in. I walked away from it, looked around the hallway, and then walked back to the area where the drinking fountain was supposed to be, but it was still gone. Thinking I was crazy, I ended up going back to my office and asking my coworkers if we'd ever had a drinking fountain there to begin with. Of course, they said that there was. I went back to the fountain a 3rd time, and it was there, the same as always. This hasn't happened since. I'm still not sure what the hell was going on that day. When my dog ran out into the street and a car almost hit it, but the car stopped, looked at me, back at my dog, then slammed on the gas pedal, running my dog over in the process. Not as bad as others, but it was last December. I was head over heels in love with this girl and just had spent $500 on a vacation for both of us and her parents. The vacation was not what I expected. Cold weather, hotel was shitty, etc. Close bracket. About 2 weeks after we got back, I started working a lot of as a carpenter in Minnesota. In December, it sucked, but I had just spent most of my money on said vacation. My girlfriend decides to go out for her friend's birthday. She gets wasted and ends up in a threesome, while I am outside freezing to death, building Somiano's multi-million-dollar home. TL. Doctor spent most of my money on GF. Worked outside in December. GF gets plowed by 2 dudes while I was working. My honeymoon this year. My mom's family has this curse in which either the bride or the groom gets seriously ill or has some sort of accident the day of their wedding. My grandmother and grandfather had colds. Parents had the flu. My aunt had a cold. My uncle sliced his hand open on the cake knife. My older sister's transport's frame snapped in half. My twin had the flu. So it's my wedding day and my husband couldn't raise his arms above his waist because he overdid it on his workout. Pretty mild in terms of a curse. Dancing was interesting, but it didn't severely impact anything. Wedding goes perfect and my mom and I think we've beaten the curse. Yay. So we are road tripping without our pups to a family vacation home. 20 miles away from our destination, over 400 miles from home, a deer jumps out of the brush and we hit it. The hood had crumpled right into our radiator. So we call the cops and insurance and try to get a tow truck. Mind you, it's July and upwards of 100 added point F. 3 hours after we hit the deer, a nearby farmer put it out of its misery. A cop shows up to record what happened. He leaves. 2 hours after that, the whole fire department of the nearby town shows up cause someone called 911 as they passed us on the road. We field their concerns and they leave. 5.5 hours after we hit the deer, the tow truck dude shows up. Dude's a prick and extremely misogynistic and ends up pissing off both my husband and I. He drops us off at a mechanic at our original destination at 9 PM. I call a taxi service, only to find out they don't send out taxis after sunset. So I frantically call my family members, hoping they know someone currently vacationing in town. My grandmother has our friend pick us up and drop us off at the vacation home. We think it's over. The next night we find out my husband's grandmother has cancer and she won't last out the year. My husband flies out 3 days later to say goodbye. I'm left alone with the mechanics consistently saying the car will be done by the end of the week. 2.5 weeks after we hit the deer I drove home to my husband and pups. So I'm not looking forward to what our kids might go through when they get married. Dad's got Sturgeon's syndrome and M.E. I've got M.E.N.P.O.T.S. Mum just got diagnosed with vascular dementia. Can't keep getting worse, right? Dog got diagnosed with diabetes last year. Now he has an inoperable liver tumor. It's beginning to take the piss a little. I feel like that guy from the story about being pressed to death and just saying more weight. The other week, I found out 2 out of 3 people in a particular friend group are into me. Of course. Third person is the person I am into. Cut off contact with a horrible ex around May of this year, and last week I finally decided to clear all of her shit out of my car. Some clothes and random junk. Got it all bagged up and tossed out. The very next day I turned a corner at the store and there she was. I haven't seen or spoken to her in 6 months, and the day after I try to remove items that remind me of her I almost run right into her. Every time I learn something the night before or the morning of it somehow appears throughout my day. IDK how or why some things would even appear in daily conversation. After a string of really bad luck, not getting a promotion, losing access to my meds and my psychiatrist, having to drop and retake a class, and more, I got into a small fender bender. I was at fault, but it was a very small collision with more damage to my vehicle than his, and just the result of hydroplaning in the rain. Simple and clean cut. No one was hurt. Everyone got to go home on time. Find out a few days later through the insurance company. After denying an ambulance and medical assistance, assuring the officer on the scene there was no injury, the guy is suing me for $50,000 for severe injuries sustained in the collision. Really? The day my life collapsed 2 years ago was late October. I managed to rebuild, get stronger and figure it out. Almost to the day I lost my job this year. The universe is definitely fucking with me. It was my birthday weekend. I helped someone jumpstart their car in the morning. Later on, LA has the most rain it's had in 6 years. The storm drain near my house get backed up. My house gets flooded, and was the only one on the block to be affected. It was bright and sunny out. I got the trash. I took one single step outside, and it started raining immediately, and hard, too. It was my 21st birthday. I was enjoying a nice birthday breakfast when my neighbor buzzed the intercom and told me someone had run over my cat. She survived, but now she's blind, and she was in a lot of pain for quite a while. Around a year or so later, more or less in the same period, it was like 1 or 2 months after my birthday, she was poisoned with rat poison. She survived, but she was in a lot of, well, pain. As last time. For a few weeks. In that moment I knew the universe hated my cat and me. In 2013 I paid off my student loans earlier than expected. So treated myself with an overseas trip to see red pandas in the wild 2 years later. Shortly before I leave, end of 2015, I get a new boss at my awesome job. When I get back from my dream vacation, the new boss decided that she did my job for 2 weeks and I do nothing all day and put me on an unofficial PIP for 30 days. Taking away all of the things that made my job worth doing and giving me reports and paperwork she was supposed to be doing. I aced the PIP, then dealt with her passive aggressiveness as she piled up more and more work over the following 5 weeks. Tore me down in private. Insulted me in front of my coworkers. I was on the verge of a mental breakdown when Oz sat me down with her and informed me that the department was being restructured and I was being made redundant. 2 months later I have a job I hate that pays a barely livable wage, but took because it was in my field, located in my old hometown, which I also hate. I have to move an hour away from all of my friends and the city I loved. Lost my social support. My family in said hometown hates me. So no support there. Later I get into 2 car accident zone because my car tires are bald because I couldn't afford to fix them, and I hydroplaned, and the second due to a rough week of being on prednisone due to an infection from poison ivy and not realizing that that shit can actually cause psychosis. I end up putting myself in the psych ward because I knew I was having crazy suicidal thoughts. I miss a week of work. and feel like the most broken human on the planet. 2 months after that, I find out my fiance, who I had been together with for 10 years, had another girlfriend the entire time we were together, who he had told me he had broken up with. He was still living with her. I lived with this man for 6 years on and off. We had been engaged for a year, and he gaslit the fuck out of me to keep up his double life. The best part was I was the side piece, not even the real girlfriend who got to meet his family and spend holidays and vacations with them. Fuck 2016. Everyone else was upset over the US presidential election. I had so much awful shit going on that I barely noticed or cared. At that point I just took it as a given that the universe was telling me I was unlovable, was just wasting space, and should just die. And spent the last month of 2016 and the first 3 months of 2017 trying to drink myself to death, or get the courage to end things more quickly. Oddly enough, the thing that saved me was someone else's misfortune. A me neighbor roded on heroin, and I ended up trying to do CPR/resuscitate a dead man before the paramedics arrived. His death rattle ended up in my mouth. I spent that entire weekend re-evaluating my life, and took the first positive steps away from my own self-destructive behavior. Now I'm engaged to a man who is a million times better than my ex. We have 2 dogs. I have a terrific job with a lot of responsibility that pays much better with opportunity for advancement in my industry in a few